This is a map that I just designed. It took me about a half an hour to design, and it's designed for games such as World of Tanks. And the premise of the map is I wanted something that used a lot of cliffs. And the reason why is because a cliff you can defend easily, but it's difficult for someone to access the cliff. So I thought that a cliff type design um, would be fun to play on. And I made three sections. Obviously, there's this corner section over here, which is something that the teams would either. It would be good for an assault defend type of map, and it would also be good for a place where people can go and decide to take it if they want to. But my initial design was that the spawns would be on the left and the right hand side of the screen here. Let's see if I can pull up a spawn. Like I'd have a spawn somewhere over here on the right, and I'd have a spawn somewhere over here on the left. So each would have its own half. You would have the bridge over here that's somewhat in the center. There's some tight passages that you would have to defend, such as this one right over here. And the water would be shallow enough that you'd be able to drive in it, because obviously you'd have to cross over. I didn't want to make any bridges crossing over, but obviously they could be implemented. And I like to make use of forests. I'm the type of player I actually enjoy when there's a lot of trees in the game. So just wanted to give you some different views of this particular design. In some cases, you have to climb up an access way. Here's one right here. Let's see if we can pull it up. Such as over here, you can see that there's between the cliffs, there's certain places where it levels out a little bit that you can climb. But in other cases, what I did was I made it step by step, such as over here, so that it's easy to climb in multiple areas. A lot of vehicles could climb up this very easily. So this is what the design was. Again, it took me about a half an hour. It's not very difficult. I think it would be great to play on. This is probably the 6th or the 7th map that I designed, and I have some really good ideas that I would like to do going forward. One of the good things about this is that there's obviously more than one play area. For example, you could go up into the corner of the map over here, and you could fight to defend these cliffs, or you could play along the river, and you can also play along this roadway, and you can play on the 4th pathway, which is around on the outside. This is a map that I designed. It took me, again, about a half an hour to 45 minutes to design. This is a rough terrain map. I wanted to make a map where the terrain was difficult to traverse so that your driving skills really have to come into play, and that there's a lot of places where you can duck and hide and things like that. And I know this map looks a little crazy, but it's actually a really, really, really cool map. So first I'm going to start out with this little valley over here. You're going to notice that there's a valley, very small valley, but it goes up along the side over here. I wish I could go faster. And the valley circumnavigates the map, but it's got a few special features. For one thing, occasionally there's a choice you can make. Look over here, the valley splits. You can head left towards the inside of the map, or you could keep on driving forward, or you could take a path that goes kind of around the outside of the map. And here's another point in the valley where it splits and goes in multiple different directions. And you can see the terrain is quite tough. It's a steep climb. It is quite a thin valley, and obviously it is also rather steep, but it's like I said, I wanted to make it challenging so that people really, really, really have to do their best and have good equipped tanks, and the tanks that have the most horsepower are going to do the best. So at this point, we've, for the most part, circumnavigated the map. So we're going to look at the interior a little bit. And there's different sections on the interior. So here's, for example, one. I put a few houses, and you can see how the terrain is shaped. Again, very challenging. There's always a place to hide behind. Over here, again, the terrain is extremely rough. So there's going to be no fast chases. You'll have to drive very carefully, and there could be an enemy anywhere. The other thing that I did was I made all the elevated portions a place where you could drive. I made it so you could drive to the top of all of these peaks. No matter which one you take, you can drive to the top. So here's an example right here, the southern peak. You can access this peak from either side, whether you're coming from the north or from the west. And each peak, like I said, you could go and park at the top. You can snipe across the map. So there's going to be people sniping who can snipe pretty much anywhere. And there's going to be people who are trying to take up sniping positions. I would say there's about 20 different peaks, because you've got the major peaks and you've got all the minor peaks. Like over here, for example, you have one of the smaller peaks. So and here's another example where you've got this little area over here where somebody can just park on this little ledge. So there's a lot of different places where you can sit and hide. For example, here's another one where on this peak alone you've got 2 lower areas plus the higher area. And if you want to get to this peak, I mean, you can do it, but look at what you got to do. You got to drive up that road. So not only can you get to the top, there's a reward for being up at the top, but there's also a risk in getting up there. I think this is a really cool map, and I also made something that goes down into a lower area, maybe if you want to hide or something like that. I think it would be fun to play on. It's very unique. I don't think that it's going to be duplicated. I'd like to see more of these types of maps. This is a map that I made. It took me about 45 minutes to an hour. It wasn't that difficult. This is obviously a map that has sniping positions. All the hills and mountains I made climbable. I like the idea that people should be able to climb wherever they want. It has a city area for people that want to play in those types of buildings. It has like a little industrial complex where the buildings are a little bit less sparse. And then you've got these small strip roads, so you have some places to play. I also wanted paving because if you have a slow tank, it should go faster on a paved surface. And it's a rather big map, and I wanted people to be able to travel across the map quickly. I made good use of trees. Over here I made a cliff that overlooks the lake, and it's got a bunch of houses to hide behind. Got a little bridge over here, little lake. I made the road cut through the land a little bit, and I decided to do this. Because I wanted to make this more fun. I wanted to make it easy to defend. You've got the cliff right on the left, you've got this channel on the right, and the mountain. So over here you could actually fight any type of tank. You could put heavy tanks over here and they wouldn't exactly be out in the open. One of the things that I added was this little island. I actually just added it today. And I figured if someone wanted to make use of that island, it could be a good strategic point. This is obviously one of the spawn areas would be on this side of the map, and the other spawn would be all the way on the other side. So a lot of heavy tanks would probably come over here. You can see that there is a rail line and a road, and they would head into this town area, the city. The city's only a couple blocks wide. And obviously it could be designed, the roads can be designed to make it playable any way that you want. I made it sloped behind the buildings So you can see it's not flat behind the buildings here, between the buildings and the mountains. And again, the road is there so that slow tanks can travel long distances quickly. Made a little rail yard. This is the industrial area right here. And the other spawn would be in this area where the town ends. So again, all these hills over here, they're all climbable. Good sniping positions. In this case, this one is climbable from the rear. Obviously, changes can be made. And this one you can climb from the front. You can see the difference in the cliff compared to the rest of the map. And that's what it looks like from overhead. So it took like between a half an hour to do the first revision, and I went through and I made some changes. So in total it took about an hour to finish it. And I think it would be a cool map. I think people would like playing on it. While I was working on this map, I had an idea. I could make a giant map that's all continuous with the same general theme. And what you can do is you can play as big of the map or as small of the map as you want. For example, the map that we're looking at here is intended to be this size, what you see here. But you could easily, break it down into something that's just like this and make it just a small map to play on that is part of a bigger map. And the same with this. Right here you could argue that you have 3 different maps. This right here would be a fun map to play on, I think, if this were a map in and of itself. So that would be the second map. And then the third map would obviously be the section over here in the corner. So one of my ideas was to make large maps and then pick segments of them, break it down into smaller elements, and then, of course, you could pick any segment you want. Like if you wanted to, you could make the map just what you see right here. And this could be a different way of playing without doing a lot of additional design work. Yeah, this is another map I did. I did this very quickly. It probably took less than a half an hour. And the premise of this one is to have multiple levels so that you can fight in... basically, nobody has territory. So a tank could go either left or he could go right. He could go counterclockwise or clockwise around the map and encounter the enemy. And he can go up to higher levels or down to lower levels. So your territory is basically how far you push back the enemy. On this side, I kind of made it more of a gradual slope so that you're just driving up a little hill. I put in a river because, people like to push tanks into the river. I think it's a lot of fun, and people like pushing tanks off the side of a cliff. And it's very narrow, the passageways, and I think people are going to love having opportunities to jump on top of other tanks and things like that. You can see over here on this one level, it's not perfectly flat, and I made the edge raised up a little bit. And the rest of them are just flat. Over here I have a little crossover between these 2 peaks. And I left the 2 peaks flat because I wanted it to be easy to play on. But still the premise holds the same. It's a little tiny map, and you can go either direction. There's no territory for any particular team. You control as much as you can. And perhaps there's an advantage to being higher up. I really don't know. Put in a few trees, just something I did real quick. Maybe as a standalone map it's not the greatest, but as part of another map, like sitting in the corner, it might be a really cool idea.